Good day, viewers. You are watching the Chronicles of the Law on TV 360. This is a show that is designed specifically to bring you legal issues, the implication of law, and then the policies of government. Law from time immemorial regulates human conduct, and society is often influenced, shaped, and administered by the directives of the most dominant legislation of her legal system. It is believed that law permits what should be done and forbids the contrary. Modern democracy in human history stands firmly on the tripod of the legislative, executive, and judicial institution, and the business of governance, public policy, and the rest of it. And the authority of the state is derived from the expression of law. Law, from the foregoing, therefore, is a subject of public interest, and its operation, implication, and application, especially as it relates to the man on the street, is what informs the design of the Chronicles of the Law. Stay with us. We'll go on a short break, and when we return, I'll introduce my guests, and we'll take this show to the next level. Welcome back. And with me on the show are my learned gentlemen. This is a show of all lawyers. This is a show that presents lawyers. And then we're all lawyers, and we're going to be talking legal issue. From my immediate right is Barrister Jide Ologun. He's a public affairs analyst and a lawyer in Nigeria. You are welcome, sir.
Thank you. You're welcome, too.
And to my extreme is Barrister Adeola Samuel. He is the National Coordinator, Consumer Rights Activist. Sir, you are welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. So today we shall be discussing the topic, the Nigerian Electricity Regulation Commission's threat to revoke the operational license of discos. We all know that before now we've had what we call NEPA. From NEPA we moved to Power Holding Company. From Power Holding Company now we have a decentralized system where the generation and then the distribution of different companies. So today we want to look at this threat because the Nigerian Electricity Regulation Commission is the regulatory agency that regulates the conduct of these discos. So let me ask you, Barrister Jide Ologun, what do you make of the recent threat by the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission?
As we all know, the law is there to ensure that the right things are done. And side by side that aspiration is the fact that there are sanctions when the right things are not being done. And of course, there are guidelines for the agencies and the stakeholders to operate. And you find those who are regulating. So in this case, there are some infractions that have been noticed by the regulators. And of course, the first thing to do is to ensure you are called to order. And if you do not comply with the guidelines, definitely you can have your license revoked, like we say in law. And the threat also is to ensure that you come back online. And then the totality of this is to ensure that the real essence of the relationship is being delivered upon. And we are talking about the power situation in the country is to ensure that electricity that is generated, is transmitted, and of course distributed to the end users, and that within the value chain system, all those who should be effectively compensated and should get their value, get their values. Because in this case that we are discussing this evening, it has to do with like under remittance, not meeting the benchmark that has been given.
Okay.
So that threat is expected to primarily bring them back to line, and if they fail to come to line, then you sanction them.
Yeah, thank you for your opening remarks on this. Let me come to you, sir. On one of the allegations raised by the Regulatory Commission is that 8 out of all the discos have not been paying their minimum bill, to the Nigerian bulk electricity trade, that is the remittance. And then other allegations raised were that there were some breach, contractual breach of the rules of engagement in this whole arrangement. So what is your take on this issue?
Well, I would start by saying that the sections they quoted was not quoted in subsections according to the letter written to them. It was
the sections who quoted?
That the NEC, Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission, quoted, which is section 74, has different subsections. So my joy is that it was not quoted based on the subsections. It was quoted specifically to say section 74. It means that everything holistically in section 74 applies.
Yeah.
Now, when you look at subsection 1 or paragraph 8 of that section, it says, upon receiving complaints from consumers association, as well as eligible customers, or in paragraph C, he said that when the commission itself deem it fit to see. So to me, for them to have emphasized on money, I want to think that the money that is supposed to be remitted to them, to MBET, in which the certain percentage of it goes to the running affairs of NEC, may have been the reason behind it. But as far as I'm concerned, if that provisions of Section 74 is to be wholly fulfilled, I believe it is a welcome development, and it is something every consumers that are witness have been part and as well as been punished, so to say, by the so-called discourse, must be happy about to see, the resultant end of the whole thing. Okay.
Let me ask you this: the discourse generates money from power supply to end users, not the consumers, and the end users, who are the consumers, don't utilize this power for free. They pay for it.
Yeah.
So if the discos have been collecting money through the billing system, why haven't they been able to, remit the statutory percentage that is required of them to remit to the authority?
Unfortunately, some of the time with their representative, we've had the opportunity of discussing this issue, and one or two of the reasons they give is that to say, one, the people are not responding to payment as it ought to be. Two, the fact that they are buying at a loss, selling below the cost price. And the question I always put to them is this: like Yoruba will say, "Ipa oraja, ipa ota." You cannot buy by force and sell by force. If you know that this thing is not profitable for you, the windows of declaring force majeure is there. Are you getting my point? You cannot continue to trade in a market you consider unprofitable, and you now think that because you want to continue to be a going concern, and then you remain there, and then you lament underneath. No, I don't believe that. I believe the fact that, let's also take it from the front of estimated billing. Before we came on here, we talking about the illegitimacy that characterized the estimated billing.
Yes.
Do you understand? And I was able to chip in something that, based on the fact that the Regulatory Commission, as empowered by the Act, Electric Power Sector Reform Act 2005, has that prerogative of giving them directive as to how the estimated billing will go on. Excuse me. But surprisingly, even the methodology given to them by the NEC was not being followed. Yet, they are claiming that they have not been able to recoup enough. That is why they are not, doing their obligation to MBET. So, to me, I think now, with this threat, quote and unquote, I think they will now know that it's not going to be business as usual. Because to me, as far as I'm concerned, what led them to this end, or to make them to become recalcitrant this long, was the attitudes of Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission,
Yes.
who has become so a dog that can bark but cannot bite. In fact, at one point in time, it has become a moo dog, can never bark, neither can they bite. Are you getting my point?
I mean, you see, they are about to bite. They are about to revoke license.
No, they are backing now. They are backing. Let's take it for it. Don't let us be over, enthusiasms about they are issuing license. I want to, like Pastor Ologun will bear witness. At our last summit, all electricity consumer protection summit, in which every stakeholders were present, my delivery speech was centered on the fact, and it was titled "Regulatory Body as a Catalyst to Discourse Impunity." As much as I can lay my hands on, as long as I have started this advocacy in the electricity sector, I have seen over time that many of the attitudes of the discourse are premised on the fact that there is no punitive measure against their activities. They violated the regulatory acts or the so-called operational guidelines that they have with reckless
I think that is why they are in trouble now.
No, so at the end of the day, I was able to chronicle some of the areas where the NEC itself they have lacked in raising the hands. So many areas. We can lay it down. Yeah, but I believe that this I'm saying to you that don't be too enthusiastic about they going to bite.
Okay.
They are backing.
So
and they have centered. Wait a minute. This is the line mine. They have, one way or the other, circled this notice of intention to withdraw license on remittance. Even though, like I said earlier on, they use the old 74, section 74. They will have easily go to the paragraph B, which the law says that they, in their own, in discretion.
Yes.
But if they have used the whole section 74, it means all those things in section 74, subsection, they are applied. So okay. We are much more interested to see.
Let me come to you now. You see, the Regulatory Commission has given all the discos 60 days within which to put up write-ups why disciplinary action should not be taken against them, and in line with the provisions of the law. I want to ask you, given the problems you have in the power sector, do you think that this privatization of the power sector that gave birth to the JINCO and the DISCO, do you think it was properly done? I mean, why? Because part of the argument then was that because of the telecommunication, the success or the breakthrough we had in the telecommunication sector, when the different what do you call it?
NEPA.
No, not NEPA.
Yes,
the telecommunication
NITEL,
NITEL,
yes.
you understand, got scrapped, and then we now have this private sector engagement. The argument is that if we have that in the power sector, we're going to have power, 24 hours electricity supply. But that is not the case. Do you think that this is a proper arrangement?
I think going by management by objective, there must have been smart goals, what we are out to achieve. And if you do returns on investment, I think we have failed, whether in the processes or the intentions and what we have on ground. And that takes us to history. You see, the installation of the power plants in Nigeria was in 1898, right here in Lagos. And there were scattered efforts to ensure electricity that will drive economic activities and deliver on prosperity till around 1950, when the colonial masters also came with the Ordinance 15, to regulate that sector. And early 60s, we had the Niger Dam and the Electricity Commission coming together to form the Electricity Commission of Nigeria. And shortly after the first, the civil war we had in Nigeria in the early 70s, we had the NEPA, which has now graduated to where we are. Yes. And at a point in time, we even invited experts from Canada to advise us. So now, let's now focus on the essence of all these efforts, is to provide electricity for Nigerians to ensure that the country is industrialized, to ensure that the people enjoy their stay. If you look at Chapter 2 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended, you discover that the primary purpose of governance is
subsection 14.
Exactly.
Paragraph
the
B.
security and welfare of the people. So it's an aspect that will help us enhance the welfare of the people. But we have failed. And like Barrister Adiola brilliantly mentioned, what is the interest of the regulatory body? Is it the money that comes to them, or the fact that we have failed on the project?
Because CCR running.
Because as we speak now, I know that even though we have very epileptic power supply in Nigeria, we consistently and effectively supply electricity to the Niger Republic and Benin Republic. In fact, recently, those two countries were owing us about 15.5 billion naira.
And they have constant power supply there.
Daily supply.
So why do we have a deficit here? And we're spot
those are the
abundance of power.
Who we are?
Exactly.
Who are we?
This is good Nigerians. Yeah.
No, who are we?
The good book says that you should love your neighbors as yourself. It didn't say you should love your neighbor more than yourself. But we in Nigeria, we love our neighbors more than ourselves.
So
for peculiarly gain, so to say.
That is where we are now.
Yes.
And I want to try and bring in a typology now. Look at the recent minimum wage of 30,000 naira that got signed into law. And we are still, going back and forth on the implementation because of the consequential adjustment. And you see the labor organization rising up to say they were engaging the government on a minimum wage that even at 30,000 naira, by global evaluation, is lower than what it was in 2011 when it was increased to 18,000 naira, because then dollar was 120 naira.
Yes, and inflation
today
rate.
Dollar is 360. So the 30,000 naira today within the macroeconomic situation is even worse than what it was then. So the labor organization is not even engaging the government on how to improve our economy. So the minimum wage now, even if you are paid that minimum wage today, a bag of rice is about 24,000 naira. Now, so, and I think in the power sector also, we must engage the macro elements. Do we really understand the power of electricity? And that is why I'm glad we are discussing a topic like this. And he's done so much in this area. Because when we are labeled as the capital of poverty, when we are promising to move 100 million out of poverty in 10 years, that means we have accepted that we are a poor country.
Yes.
How has the civilized country, for example, that we can use to benchmark, migrated from poverty to prosperity? Industrialization is key. So what efforts are we moving in that direction? Again, we must ask this question. How much have we invested? As we address this issue now, my great country has gone to seal a deal with the World Bank to obtain $3 billion for intervention in the power sector. And we have spent so much. So I think we just need to come to the point where those in the value chain are not thinking of what money can we get from the distribution companies, but what value can we give to the nation and ensure that we join the developed countries of the world. And when that is the focus, all these minor elements will be taken care of. And you know at that point that if you are not contributing towards the achievement of that vision, you will definitely be sanctioned. Because I may preempt that within the next 60 days or whatever that they have to explain themselves, that we are busy with other issues and would have forgotten that a threat was ever issued to the discourse.
So with your submission now, I'm coming to you with his submission that you think that the regulatory bodies are not doing enough because given the condition, the threats, and then the way they are going about it, it looks like it's just about pecuniary, the pecuniary angle, that is the monetary terms and areas for which they have failed. And you also raised an issue about the micro sector, okay? Talking about, I want to bring this question to the the provisions of the Constitution in paragraph 13 and 14 of the 1999 Constitution, the second schedule, paragraph 13 and 14, which, especially paragraph 14, which says that the states' houses of assemblies can make laws, okay, to allow for generation of powers in areas not covered by the national grid. But today, what you have is even states that have developed capacity and made laws, they still go to the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission to ask for license. Is this regulatory authority, is it constitutional?
Yeah.
Is this constitutional?
Yeah,
Because
yes, it is.
power supply is in the concurrent list by that provision of the Constitution, second schedule, paragraph 13 and 14.
Yes.
What's your take on that?
My take is very simple. It's just like, let's first of all answer the first question, talking about the pecuniary gain of the Nigerian Electric Regulatory Commission issuing that notice of license withdrawal. The fact remains that if you look at the letter, the body of the letter they sent, we from All Electricity Consumer Protection Forum, we have a copy, and it says section 74. And when you follow the other paragraph, it now, specifically stated their inability to remit that we supposed to belong to MBET. You understand my point?
Yes.
So in my own mind, my own little mind, I just zero it down that, okay, you just use section 74 as a small screen. The area where you are getting to is just the area. Yes, the money. Because the money, out of which that which is paid, I think about 5% or thereabout going into Nigeria Electric Regulatory Commission. You understand? The GENCO also will receive their own. Like that. That is how the money is shared. So to me, I believe that, and that is the area where we, that in the consumer rights advocacies of electricity sector, we are taking it out from there that if you have used section 74, mutatis mutandi with subsections there, we will not have anything to say. But if you have used section 74 in whole, which means that everything in that section 74 must be applied. There should not be say, because what I'm trying to say, now, tomorrow, maybe by magic, they all ate, what have you, run around and started, remitting. Does that mean they have fulfilled the provision of section 74?
Yes, I
think you get me now.
Yes.
Does that mean they have fulfilled the provision of section 74 and it is enough for you to now give them a clean bills of it that they can now go on? Because every periodically NEC trying to run consumer forum.
We'll take that thought when we return from the break. We have to go on a short break now. You are still watching the Chronicles of the Law on TV 360. Stay tuned, don't touch that dial. Welcome back. You are on to the Chronicles of the Law on TV 360 Nigeria. I'm still here with my guest, Barrister Adeola Samuel and Barrister Jide Ologun. Before we went for the break, I asked a question, two-side question. Now, the Attorney Generals of the respective states in Nigeria, coming to you now, ought to know that they must play a role in advising the state governors and the State House of Assembly on the provisions of law as it relates to electricity. Because if you look at the Constitution places this electricity generation, distribution on the concurrent list. And then it says that in that paragraph 14 of the second schedule, it says that the State House of Assembly can make laws for the generation, distribution of electricity in areas not covered by the national grid. But you have the states who have been able to develop the capacity, they still go to the federal government to ask for license. Is it that the Attorney Generals are ignorant of the law? Or is it the state that is ignorant of the law? And they keep talking about restructuring, whereas the Constitution has already restructured the issue of power. What do you have to say about this?
I always say that where there is a will, there is a way. Talking about generation, at least I'm aware that Cross River State came up with a captive generation of power of, in Calabar to support the industrialization movement going on in that state. But the state still had to go and dialogue with the Port Harcourt Electricity Distribution Company on distribution. When you look at the value chain, you generate, you need that the agents that will transmit, you need those who will distribute. And like I said earlier, if we know the value of electricity, we will do everything we need to do to dislodge the bureaucracy. Because as we speak now, the national grid is still as relevant. But going into content analysis, how many times in recent time has the grid collapsed?
Due to vandalization, lack of gas,
vandalization, claiming that we are even generating more than we can transmit. We transmit more than we can distribute. So you now see wastages. And that does not portray prudent approach to governance. And like you asked, if, for instance, we run a system like what we have in the United States of America, where California, one of the 50 states, has an economy that is about the 5th largest economy in the world as a state. You see, if we replicate that in Nigeria and decentralize this
power generation,
exactly, let states compete. Whatever infrastructure they can put in place to energize the economies of their states and prosper the people, go ahead. But what we have also seen in this country is that we have a massive gross distrust that appears to clamp down on developmental efforts. So we bring in different kinds of politics. Even though we have oil and gas in abundance in a part of the country, you still hear the generating companies saying because of shortage of gas, they cannot produce these megawatts. But then, it is on record that Nigeria has the largest deposit of proven gas in Africa. I think the 9th largest in the world. It is on record that South Korea generates about 62,000 megawatts of electricity for a population of about 50 million. So you find out that probably what we have not been able to achieve in Nigeria is the politics aspect of it. So, okay, now, let's come together. Where is this resource? Barrister Diola, we were discussing this before we came on air that you are talking of citing a plant somewhere. We learned in economics in the secondary school. Now you locate it to where the raw materials are. But now we are looking for oil in a part of the country where we will spend billions and trillions.
But talking about
we have it in abundance. Talking
about decentralization.
Yes.
When we came up with the idea of Discos and Genco, was that not what we were thinking? I mean, are
you talking about the unbundling of the power sector as a decentralized way of doing things?
I'm referring to what he said, because the question was that why have we not managed those the capacity generation on areas not covered by
based
national
on the
grid?
state. I think the issue does not border on the fact that they don't know that law. Mm-hmm. The issue is that their priority is not that which will benefit the people, but that which will benefit themselves. Let me calm down. If there is no area of national grid that is being covered by the government, by the federal government, the state will develop their own. It is the same thing that makes them over-reliance on allocation every month, that makes some of the resources not covered by the provisions of the Constitution to be handed over to the government or the federal government, not to be tapped. For example, is agriculture not a concurrent kind of provision?
Yes.
How many states develop agriculture? That is why when they mention restructuring, I laugh. Mm-hmm. I laugh in the sense that when you look at the totality of what we call Schedule 2, that is where the amendment or whatever they call restructuring can take place.
Yes.
They don't need all this noise
The
about.
restructuring has happened already.
But can I tell you that how many of their representatives of rep members and senate that they have been sent into National Assembly have ever talked about touching that Schedule 2? How many amendments of constitution they have had in the last 2 or 3 two decades that we have been in democracy that they have ever touched that Schedule 2? They will not. Why? Because in that Schedule 2, some of them are eating, they are overfilled, and they become a glutton. Yes. Now, the state government would not. The only state that have been able to notice, which started from the day of Tinubu, is Lagos State. But Tinubu, according to what you said, thank God it is the same vice president that is the Attorney General then. They developed this NIPP or IPP kind of a thing.
Yes.
But it was scuttled by virtue of the fact that they cannot accommodate them.
Yes.
Do you understand? But when Fashola came in there, he developed his own based on that his understanding of this thing, and he bypassed the so-called national grid, and he beginning to supply light to all some notable government parastatals and institutions. Yeah, you understand my point? State, unfortunately, because of a break in government transition, the other one came there. He never followed suit, but he did something creditably well. He sent a bill to the State Assembly to pass their own state Power Sector Reform Act to reform bill to law. Unfortunately, that
it's still hanging there.
Still hanging
there. I hope it becomes priority in this administration.
And the funny side of it is that immediately this government comes to be, the Sanwo-Olu government come to be, from our own secretariat, all Electricity Consumer Protection Forum, we wrote a lengthy letter to intimate him and bring it to his notice that there is a subsisting bill, and in which he can tap into the provision of the Schedule 2 paragraph 13 and 14 and make Lagos State very, very completely out of this lockdown. Because when you talk about industrialization, if Lagos State catch the fire, it will spread over.
Spread across, yes.
Unfortunately, because of their own selfish interest, they don't want to throw money into any capital-intensive project. Yeah. They are only looking for you see what somebody did. He started introducing bridges as if Lagos State is covered by. In fact, the area where he introduced those bridges, there are no waters there. You see, because that is where money cannot be. That's the problem.
Let's water it down now to the man on the streets, okay? Because now we have looked at the laws, we have looked at legislation, cited sections, and all that. Sometimes we need to bring it down completely. In your own view, what do you think is a solution to the problem of can we have 24-hour supply of electricity in Nigeria? Is it possible?
Unfortunately for you, coming down to the downtrodden people, many of them are local government to themselves. They produce for themselves borehole.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking. What's the solution to that problem?
Renewable energy.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I just read before we came on here.
What is renewable energy?
Renewable energy is producing power supply outside the national grid, which from solar, from wind, from coal. Fortunately for us, from cocoa pod. You are surprised?
Yes.
Okay. Just last year, Ivory Coast made 140 megawatts from cocoa pod.
Cocoa pod?
Yes. The waste. That cocoa pod waste.
Yes.
Ivory Coast is more or less a
cocoa producing nation.
They didn't let it waste. They make power megawatt from that place, which is about 140. Was
it private sector driven?
It is government driven. We can call that. You understand my point? Now, the renewable energy we are talking about, the most one that is being exploited by the people, the downtrodden, is solar. Are you getting my point?
Yes.
But I read before we come on here that the government has increased the custom duties on solar materials to this nation.
So
I'm talking about
is the government working against?
That is what we have.
Masses?
The government are the first oppressors, even of the people that they are supposed to lead. And I'm sorry, sir, by Stadido Logun. Let me shock you. When we had a meeting in Abuja with the ministers of power, I was invited on my capacity as the All Electricity Consumer Protection Forum National Coordinator. And they talk about power sector recovery program. I was telling by Sajide Ologun that they are saying they want to borrow $3 billion, collect $3 billion from World Bank.
Yes.
In that power recovery program, in which we have 2017 to 2021, it was stated there is $2.6 billion US. And what they intended to use it for, part of it, even though minimal, is renewable energy.
Yes.
Are you getting my point? I have the document.
But that's not the focus.
That is not the focus.
And that is the solution.
And that is not the focus. And that is the challenge we get to them. Because bulk of this money, they might not tell you, is central on distribution. I have the documents. And that was why we challenged the minister. Oga, how can you be borrowing money to finance a privately owned organization? Because that is the understanding you make us to have when you say you are unbundling and then you privatize, although I call it monopolistic privatization. But that is what you make us understand.
Because there's a problem even in the privatization.
Exactly. Then, I now ask the minister, sir, when it comes to question and answer, I say, Oga, this is the powerhouse, Ministry of Power. Every year, you budgeted 140 million naira for generators, diesels, and repairs.
In the ministry.
And now you are putting down here a case of a renewable energy. Why not make your own ministry the hub or the harbingers of that renewable energy? Instead of budgeting 140 million naira every year, say I have your budget here so that you cannot. You know, and he said, engineer, you know that's what I was discussing with you as we are coming down. And that now as the vice has said it, I want you to intensify on it. I now said in his own house, he has solar, 24 hours. So
what is stopping Nigeria?
He cannot extend that which he's using in his own house. When he has the resources, when he has the power, as the ministers of power, to extend it to other Nigerians. Now I heard that they have now increased the excise duty or the custom duty
on
solar materials, all other renewable energy materials. That which they are supposed to reduce to the minimum, to the barest minimum, in order to help the discourse.
To encourage it.
Perhaps they don't want to take the food or the boiling bottle out of the disco.
So is that the only solution to the problem?
You spoke about the solution. I think the solution is simple. It's not legalistic. It's about dropping the greed syndrome.
The what?
The greed syndrome.
What is greed syndrome? What is greed syndrome?
Bring in the need syndrome.
Well, can you tell us what greed syndrome means?
The greed syndrome
having more than you want.
Let me have more than enough to secure my family and generation and my region. Then others may perish. And any society that is managed with that mindset is heading for disaster. Let's bring in the concept of the United States of America, for instance. Electricity is like a fundamental human right. So the governance system, they cannot imagine that you live in a community and you don't have access to electricity. So it's not thought of. And that's why you have 50 states with 24/7 electricity. So and what happens? You save cost for the people. You don't need to go and buy a generator. You don't need to go and buy diesel. You don't need to go and service generator. You can plan your life. You have a peaceful environment. Have you noticed that even in Nigeria, when you have consistent power supply for a while, the environment is quiet? How many reports have we read of a whole family being killed by carbon monoxide from generators?
Yes.
We know the impact. We are talking about climate change now. You can see what flood is doing to us. So if you look at what Singapore is doing, waste management, they are maximizing this on a daily basis. They recycle the waste, turn it to nice
Unfortunately
oxygen.
for us, we can get power from waste.
Exactly.
And we have waste here.
So if the upper stakeholders discover that, hey, we all belong to this society, and we must enable the society, even if we want to create our own class of luxury, let the people be able to operate effectively.
Yes.
It's not that you want to rejoice because people come crawling before you. And the implication of that is that by and large, we have been able to stop the mill of industrialization. We have created a huge unemployment gap. I think we are about about 25% now
Yes.
in unemployment percentage. And we are promoting criminality.
And you know why?
And that is a threat to whether you are in the lower class or the upper class.
It's a threat to the ecosystem.
Exactly. Beyond that, even if today you have the paraphernalia of security, one day you will leave office. And that explains also
does that
why they
cover
don't
the
want to leave
extended
office.
family?
You know,
Why are they
if
kidnapping their cousin
they are
and
concerned
kidnapping
about
their
extended
nephew?
family, they will do what we are saying here. If you are concerned about the extended family, all right, and it affects a whole lot of things. Let's isolate the UAE, for instance. Do you know that in UAE they have Minister of Artificial Intelligence?
Yes.
And they have Artificial Intelligence Academy. And you know that technology itself is power driven.
Yes.
So they are already connecting with the economies of hundreds of years to come. And that's what you call sustainability.
Yes.
They are not jeopardizing the future by their activities today. Because you must prepare for tomorrow today. And that's why we are appealing, like the Chinese will say, that the best time to have planted a tree was 20 years ago.
Yes.
The next best time is now. Now, can we look inwards? If there was an envisioned Nigeria, can we go back to that vision? If there was none, can we create a fresh one? In 1999, we were all bombarded by Vision 2020.
Yeah.
But we are just 1 year to 2020.
No, we were bombarded by Vision 2010.
Exactly.
2010.
Now to
2010. That was when we are talking about the millennium era.
Exactly. And the United Nations has simplified it. We have the Sustainable Development Goals, all right, which will be evaluated by year 2030. And it talks about zero hunger. It talks about energy that we are talking about a decent society, different kinds of things, no poverty and things like that. And some countries of the world are keen into that. But what are we doing as a nation? Will it not amaze you that Singapore was our classmate in poverty in the early 60s?
Yes.
In fact, Lee Kuan Yew came to relate with some African leaders on how to migrate from poverty to prosperity. And when he saw our attitude to governance, the man went back and translated his country. I have that big book, From Third World to First World. He is late now, of blessed memory.
And his son is taking over.
Today, Singapore is one of the best places to live and to work in the world. In fact, when Donald Trump was to meet the leader of North Korea, they met in Singapore.
Yeah.
You see, so, and you look at Dubai, for example. Dubai is attracting wealth from across the globe. I think it was about the 4th or 8th most visited region in 2018 or so. So when you look at all this, and that today, my great country that gained political independence in 1960, October 1, still has to depend on the colonial masters to give medical attention to my president. I think if we have not failed, we are very close to failure.
Unfortunately,
to put all this to rest, just in 30 seconds, tell us what you think the immediate action government can take, whether they are palliatives, whether they are long-term,
as far as the
immediate
action is concerned, the power
that
sector,
will restore
the power sector,
supply.
it is either the government sold out is 40% equity, and let us know that we are now fully privatized, and let us rearrange, re-engineer, and refire that, performance contract they signed in 2013, November 3rd. I have the whole performance contract in my hand, and I can look at it that over time there has not been fulfillment of any work. One of it, they sign it, that they within the 18-month gestation period, the gap of 8 million metering gap will be filled. This is 6th year. Nothing has been done. They have come up with different kind of, and the reason is this: the regulatory body that's supposed to be that which will be the watchdog and create an environment that they will perform according to the rules and the guidelines of operation. Look the other side. Up to the last time that they just issued this thing, I faced them in Abuja and I told them, you are not doing anything to even help the consumer, because we are talking about the downtrodden. Everything go back to these people, the downtrodden. You know they are thinking and they are thinking about.
So you think once government sells off its 40%
I said, it's either sell off your 40%.
Would that solve the problem?
Yes. You know why?
How?
You know why? This contraction called privatization, which I call monopolistic privatization or dashing to the cronies, is nothing but a contraption. Why? Every four cardinals that are supposed to be followed within the ambit of privatization was not followed. One, capital intensive. Two, technical know-how. This tool is fundamental. The rest three are part of, okay, if you cannot meet up, then let's withdraw it. Or we sanction you. Even the sanction is not there. But the capital and the technical know-how was not looked into. That is why up to today, the transformer of 1960 that have been in one community is still the one functioning. You cannot imagine they are cutting wire to do as fuse in a community. And then every other 2 days, the thing gets cut off. For a transformer that have been there for as far as 1960. They did not replace any line materials that they met on ground. Which is, the funny side again, is that the price of these things have been included in every bill that you receive every month.
So you are talking about a total overhauling of the system.
If they cannot sell that one to make a reviews of the privatization, let us take our property back and send those people away so that we can, if we can now redo it now that we have a government with purpose.
No, we were doing it before. We couldn't handle it.
Yes, because the people that are there.
We spent 16 billion.
No, because the people that are there
dollars
are doing it because of their money.
And what makes you feel the people who are going to come will not do the same thing?
Well, I believe that because our eyes have opened now. I can tell you, few years back, there was nothing like me handling Electricity Consumer Protection Forum. But Mr. Logu can testify that for some of us that have been on their neck, they will have done worst. This present privatization. If they didn't know that we are watchdog and we are watching them, and we are not going to take no for an answer, I am putting it to you that just present moment, e-billing is going on in Ikeja Electric. What is e-billing? E-billing is sending text message to you that this is your bill for every month, and they never do anything to.
And that is contrary to the law.
Completely. Completely. And nobody is checking them.
We need to come to the point where if the government expects the people to respect the law,
you are closing your thoughts now. So
the government also should respect the law.
Yes.
And I'm throwing out this question. Is it in the law of this country that citizens should be the one buying transformers for some investors who have gone into wrong investments? Is it in the law that citizens should be forced to pay crazy bills, estimated bills?
To contribute money to buy poles, buy
wire,
line materials,
to be given prepaid meters when you have huts in Ghana that have prepaid meters installed. So make life easy. And I challenge the government. If this government or all these stakeholders decide to do the right thing, the money they will make will amaze them, because we have a population of 200 million. That's a huge market when you do the right thing. As long as we continue to polish the wrong thing, I take us to the adage in China, that says that you cannot carve a rotten wood. We need a solid wood. And what is that solid wood? We need a new reputation. We must start doing things the right way in this country. Let the interest of the people be the driving force. And we
thank
can
you very much. We are practically out of time. Thank you, viewers. This is the Chronicles of the Law, and then we have come to the end of the show. We hope you enjoy this moment with us. We will come back to you same time, same station. Always will be with you. Just remember to tune in as usual, and we'll bring experts to decipher the issues of law and then to make meaning out of government policies, how it affects you, the laws, the legislation, and how same can be applied, and then for Nigerians to have a worthwhile experience in this country. Thank you, and God bless you.